Oh, howdy, gang. Last week I tried to do this video on some frequently asked questions, and unfortunately my microphone decided to die. And so after I'd recorded it and I was listening to the playback, there was a horrible buzzing through the whole thing. So went ahead and scrapped that, and we're going to try it again. But before we get started, I did want to say that if you enjoy these at all, go ahead and just leave me a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. It really does help with the algorithm. Also, before we start, I did want to give a shout out to the World War III 1987 blog. I'll put a link to it in the description, but if you're interested in Advance to Contact and the Soviet Endgame series as a whole, then World War III 1987 should be right up your alley. It is literally exactly what it says, World War III 1987. I know I posted a link to it in the Soviet Endgame Facebook page, but I thought, why the heck not? You know, let's give Mike and his effort a few more eyes. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and tackle some questions. Okay, the first question I got, and this is probably the most common question I get, and that is, why did you pick 1980? And the most intuitive answer, the first answer, is because I hadn't seen anything set in 1980. Even when General Hackett did his Third World War book in the late 70s, he was actually still placing it in kind of the mid to late 80s, if I recall, and I'm sure somebody can correct me in the comments. So I wanted to take a look at something a little new, and that's something that you find, you know, there are only so many ways you can tell Soviets invade Europe story. And so I thought this would be one way to kind of bring something new in. And what's new, or what changes the most in this telling, as opposed to, say, World War III 1987, is that a lot of the weapon systems that come online and we really think of when we think of the late Cold War, they're not online yet. We barely have the Black Hawk helicopters. We don't have the Abrams in Europe yet. Right now, those are all still in the U.S., and they're going to have to get shipped over in the early reforger. That's the reintroduction of forces to Germany operations. So, you know, that means that the U.S. is operating with M60 tanks trying to stop the latest Soviet T-72s, and not to mention, you know, all the other tanks. So the Soviets really do have that edge. In fact, with the exception of air power and the supercarriers, the Soviets have an edge in almost every other aspect of the actual military hardware. I know we'll say we're better at logistics. We'll say that we have better command and control. Sure, that's all true, but the idea here is that this was a period in time where the Soviets had essentially caught up to us with their equipment, with the exception again of the air power, because we have the Eagle out there, which the top line Soviet fighters are what, the MiG-23. I mean, it's not going to be good for them. And I mean, you know, how many MiG-21s does it take to take down an Eagle? A lot. So you know, with that one exception, and don't forget, the Soviets can kind of work to overcome that with their S-300 air defense system. This is just coming online, and it's, you know, so it's before Patriot. So, you know, on our side, we're still using Hawk batteries. It gives them, you know, that advantage. Not to mention the mobile launchers, the mobile SAM platforms that the Soviets would be using to protect the armored columns. So, you know, just in a lot of ways, this was a story. I wanted to share a story that would shine a light on some different weapon systems, some stuff that you're not really used to. So that really is kind of the big reason for it. Also, you know, as a Gen X kid, I grew up in the 80s, so the question of what would the 80s look like as a time of war, that really resonated with me, and so why not start at the beginning? Okay, so that's question one. If anybody wants to know more, just, you know, ask in the comments, and I can go into more detail. The second question is, what about that story about you, 3 midgets, and a bottle of tequila? I got no comment on that. Question number 3. And this one I get an awful lot. The beta readers come at me with this one a lot. And that is, why do you love Jimmy Carter so much? And I got to tell you, I am not a fan of Jimmy Carter. I really disliked his presidency. Looking back at it, there was that man never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And as a young man, when I was in Japan. I was in Japan when he went over to North Korea and made what I thought at the time, and still think to this day, was one of the dumbest foreign policy decisions, and that was to hand over, piles of cash and to offer to build a light water reactor for the North Koreans in exchange for the thing that we knew they were never going to do, which was to give up their nuclear program. So yeah, that sure didn't work out the way that he thought it was. And I kind of felt like he was just, chasing another Nobel Prize. So, not a fan of Carter at all. But I wanted to be honest about my portrayal of him. And I found myself a lot more sympathetic to what he was trying to accomplish, and trying to focus on what he was trying to accomplish in foreign policy, and not ultimately, the disaster that it was. So, And there were some genuine surprises in there. So, for example, while he did run on a platform that included reducing defense spending, he actually had significant increases in defense spending. And a lot of the programs that are missing from the story because they haven't been developed yet were really the funding began under the Carter administration, or in some cases, it was extended from Ford into the Carter administration. So. I'm going to give credit where credit's due. He definitely seemed like kind of an anti-military guy, even as a Navy man himself. But no, he really, when he got into office, he saw the stat sheets and realized, oh no, we got to fix this. So I don't love Jimmy Carter. And I'm just trying to be fair. And that actually is going to be one of the things that I think is going to get me the most one-star reviews. It's going to be people that read the first book and think I'm too sympathetic to Jimmy Carter, and people who read the second book and think I'm too sympathetic to George Bush. So, you just can't win sometimes. So you just write the best story that you can. The fourth question is, now I wordsmithed this question a little bit, so when the reader hears it back, hopefully they know which question this is. But what I came up with was, do you think the current state of the U.S. military is prepared for future threats? And, it's hard. I don't want to bag on leadership too much. I think that where I will say the biggest issues lie, from my perspective, is in the naval buildup. I can't believe how bad we have been at updating our warship design and production. We're taking the Ticonderogas offline. They're coming in at the end of their life, and what are we replacing them with? 2 Zumwalt class destroyers? That seems like a bad exchange. The littoral combat ships were just an absolute disaster. It really felt like that was a ship in search of a purpose, and now we're just deciding that it wasn't worth it. I think what do we have? The FFGX? That looks promising. It'd be nice to get a frigate in the fleet again. The Burkes are great ships, don't get me wrong, top of the line air defense ships, but even those are, from the 90s. The design, designed in the 80s, built in the 90s through the 2000s. So yeah, that really is a glaring hole to me, that we have our super carriers, great, the Ford has just gone out to sea, wonderful, but without the escorts, it's just a risk. It's a gamble, and we need something to replace the ships that are coming offline, and we just don't seem to have it. I think that as far as the air situation goes, the F-22 is still the top dog out there. Even if the Su-57 is going to be a competitor, there's just not enough of them to make any sense. The F-35 seems like it's coming along well. Culturally, I think we do have some problems. I really don't want to get into what those are, but I think everybody probably knows what I'm talking about. And so, to restate the question, it was, do you think the current state of the U.S. military is prepared for future threats? And I feel like no, but it can get there in a hurry. And I definitely, again, mentioning the naval situation, we definitely need to get some updated designs, something that can replace the ships that are coming offline. And I know that's probably not the most satisfactory answer, but it's the best I got for you right now. And then the last question I want to cover on this video is, in the Soviet Endgame series, will any of the nations bail on their treaty obligations? And I don't want to give any spoilers, so I'm kind of dancing around this a little bit. And I will say that in Advance to Contact, Turkey is going to have a socialist coup. And this is something that came really close to happening in real life. I expanded it a little bit and made it an absolute, made the coup successful. But there was a lot of disturbance between the socialists and the rightists in Turkey in the late 70s and early 80s. And this is actually one of those plots, the subplots that actually got mostly extracted. I still have the action happening there, but originally I had a POV characters that were right there in Turkey when it was happening, up in the naval base at Sinop in northern Turkey. But so there's that, and who's to say that question is going to be something that plays throughout the whole series, because if you watched my this was definitely in the day after video. It was that whole, we're not going to trade Topeka for Bonn or something like that, and so there's always that incentive to say, yeah, this was all a good idea, but now that it's getting hot, I can't do it anymore. So we'll see which states have the fortitude to stick with it and which ones bail out. But really, that's those are the 5 questions that I had. 4 real questions and one real dumb joke. But keep them coming. If you have more questions, drop them in the comments. And again, if you're getting anything out of these videos, go ahead and leave a like. Subscribe to the channel. I enjoy making them, so hopefully there's somebody out there that's actually getting all the way to the end of them. And I'll see you guys next time.